What's up guys, C93 here, back with another God guide, and today we're going to be talking about a god who utilizes this build meta to its fullest potential. You know who it is? It's that high flying, singing, sliding, flying right into your titan god, Apollo. So first things first, I've been playing a lot of Apollo recently, and I truly believe that he utilizes the current build meta better than most hunters in the game. Now, I'm not going to say he's the best hunter in the game, but he's a hell of a lot of fun, does a bunch of damage, and who doesn't love that global ultimate? Being able to fight your lane and then dive into the team fight. Or seeing that guy with 15 HP in a dream running away trying to get that recall off and then you swan song off that chariot and finish him off. It's so satisfying and so much fun to do. So as usual, I'm going to put some timestamps in the description. We're going to go over his moves, his builds, his combos, and a little tips and tricks that you may or may not know for Apollo. So first things first, we're going to talk about his abilities. Now, Apollo's passive may be one of the, if not the greatest passive in the game for hunters. It's called Audacity. After 10 successful basic attacks, Apollo gains Audacity, increasing his attack speed by 100% for the next 5 basic attacks. Hit or miss, that's important. Apollo also gains 2 stacks of Audacity for each successful damaging ability on enemy gods. So what this means is after you land 10 basic attacks, Apollo's attack speed will increase by 100%. 100%! That is insane, especially at low levels. And it stays there until you fire off those next 5 shots. That's important. I'll explain why later on in the video, but keep that in your head. Also, Apollo gains 2 stacks of Audacity for each damaging ability to enemy god. Damaging ability. That means his Serenade, the Mesmerize / Stun / whatever you want to call it, that will not grant a stack. Next up, we're going to talk about his first ability. This is your main source of wave clear and should be leveled first. It is so beautiful. Apollo strums a single chord in his lyre. It's so beautiful it hurts, and all enemies in a long range line take damage. Now this is a very simple ability. It is a straight line cast, good for clearing waves, good for poke damage, and in the late game, does some pretty good damage itself. Now there is one thing to notice. There's a delay between when you cast it and when it actually comes out, and you can see that delay in his wind up animation. Now, you can use this to your advantage. Aim at a target you don't want to hit, cast it, whip it over to the target you want to hit, and they won't suspect a thing. Bam, they get hit in the face with it. Another good thing to know is it does go through walls. So if you see a god on the other side, he's trying to run away, take a corner, you can shoot it right through that corner and still hit the god. Next up, we're going to be talking about his second ability, Serenade. Apollo uses his amazing voice to mesmerize all nearby enemies and bolster himself with additional physical protection. Any damage done breaks the effect. Now before we get into this ability, I want to make a note that certain Apollo skins, when you cast this on quick cast or normal cast and you can see where it's going to go, it almost shows like an outer ring, but it's not an outer ring. If you look at it from a top-down view, you'll see that they are directly above the main ring around Apollo. But if you look at it from behind Apollo, like you would normally be looking, they almost look further out. It's important to note that those won't mesmerize the enemy. They need to be in the main ring. Okay, now back to the ability. This ability stuns every god in a circle around him, meaning gods behind you that are chasing you will also get mesmerized. If you do any damage to the god, it breaks the mesmerize. It lasts for 2.3 seconds at top rank, and that's a pretty good amount of time. To hit somebody and run away, that's a long time for Apollo. Now, it also gives 35 physical protections, which is good. It used to give physical and magical, but we'll take the physical for right now. Also, it's important to note that it does suffer from diminishing returns, or DR as some people call it. So if an enemy is getting stunned to oblivion, and then you mesmerize them with the Serenade, it'll only last about a second. Alright, on to his third ability, the moves. Apollo runs forward and slides on his knees, dealing damage and knocking aside all enemies and adding a stack of Audacity for each enemy hit. At the end of the slide, the movement speed is decreased for enemies and increased for himself and allies. This is Apollo's dash. It's great for a lot of different things, but first we'll talk about getting yourself out of a jam. If you're tucked into a corner, pinned down by the enemy team, you hit that slide, you're going to knock up the enemy gods. Knock up is the best form of CC because aside from Jing Wei, no other gods can do anything while they're flying through the air. Also, when you finish the slide, you get a 25% movement speed buff, and you can get right out of that bad position pretty easily. Now another way you can use this is if you're chasing an enemy god, and you slide and get that buff, that's a 25% movement speed, you're going to chase down the enemy god. If you happen to catch them in the end of your slide, they're going to get debuffed 25% as well, and then it's game over for them. They're not going anywhere. Also, Teammates do benefit from the movement speed buff as well if they are in the finishing circle, that little explosion at the end of his dash, which is really good for if you're running down mid lane, you're chasing somebody, or you're running to the Titan, you pop that, boom, whole team gets a 25% increase in speed, and they are zooming down the lane. Now for the negative side of this ability. If you hit a god with the slide and knock him in the air, he won't be slowed when he lands, unless he's in that final explosion at the end. The slide itself does not slow people, it is only the finish right at the end of his slide. So if a god is right in your face and you slide through him and knock him up, it's going to be great, he's knocked up, he can't do anything for a second, but he won't be slowed. That also goes for allies. If you're going to slide through an ally to give him a speed boost, it's not going to do anything unless they're in the final explosion. So keeping that distance to create the appropriate slide so that your teammates get the buff or that your enemies get the debuff is very important to know. Now, on the flip side of that, the slow at the end, the little explosion, doesn't do damage. It only slows the person. So if you slide and you land short, you're not going to do damage with the explosion. It doesn't add additional range to the damage you're going to do. You need to hit the enemy god with Apollo's body to knock him up. If you don't, they might just get slowed, and then you're kind of in a bad position. So what you need to do with this ability is learn the distance that you can knock the god up and then also have them land in the explosion, and that'll get benefits of both sides of this ability. Now, the last thing I want to say about this ability before we move on to his ultimate is that it is a damaging ability. So if you do slide through an enemy god and get them with the slide, you will gain a stack of audacity. But you can also gain audacity stacks per minion you slide through. So each minion wave coming has 6 minions in it. If you slide through the entire wave, you're going to get 6 stacks of audacity. That's pretty close to the 10 you need to start his passive off. Now, the best way to do this is to go around the back of the enemy minion wave and then dash into your minion wave. That way, even though your dash is on cooldown, you're not completely out of position and you have a chance to get away in case someone comes out of the jungle or jumps on you from behind. Okay, on to his last ability, Across the Skies. This is Apollo's ultimate. Apollo rides his chariot across the sky, choosing when to land, dealing damage every 0.2 seconds for 0.8 seconds as he lands. Enemies hit by the last tick of the landing will also be knocked up. Now, this is a great ultimate. It's a global ultimate, which means you can travel across the map very quickly, which means you can catch up to a team fight that most people wouldn't be able to, which is a big perk. Unfortunately, the ability does take a long time to take off, so if you try to pop it while you're in the middle of a fight, you're kind of a sitting duck for a little bit, but if you can get it off, you are free, you are untargetable in the sky. However, you are not invulnerable in the sky. So if somebody has a bleed or any kind of tick damage on you, you will still take the damage while you're flying. Now, the cost of this ability is kind of weird. It's 10 mana plus 40 mana per second, so the longer you fly, the more mana you use. It's not bad at higher levels, but at lower levels, you can burn through half your mana pool before you even get back to your lane. Now, onto the damage aspect of it. It does damage every 0.2 seconds for 0.8 seconds as he's coming down, and enemies hit by the last tick of damage will be knocked up. You kind of want to land the last tick most importantly because that'll affect your combo that you follow up with. Also, enemy gods hit by this ability grant audacity stacks, so when you land, if you can land with your passive on, that's nice. However, I would rather have my passive up before I take off, and I'll explain why when we get into builds. So that's pretty much it for Across the Skies. It's a great ability, it's global, so you can clear your wave and then fly to a team fight to help them out, or you can fly to a Gold Fury or Fire Giant or anything. And if you take a wide path when you're a higher level, it doesn't really affect your mana, but you can come around the back of the enemy team and they won't even see you coming. If you fly straight into them, a lot of times somebody will call out that you're coming in. Oh, lastly, if you die while you're channeling it before you take off, it doesn't go on cooldown. So it sucks that you died, but at least you still have the ability. Alright, on to builds. The current build meta is centered around attack speed and penetration, and Apollo benefits greatly from it. Now, the first item you're going to get is Hunter's Blessing. You're also going to get a tier 1 Devourer's Gauntlets when you start. Hunter's Blessing, when it's evolved, gives 30 basic attack damage, 10 MP5, and 15% attack speed. The basic attack damage is great because he's an auto attack hunter. The 10 MP5 is great for his ult because you don't burn through mana as quickly, and the 15% attack speed is great because the rest of the build revolves around attack speed. Now, hopefully on your first back, you'll have enough to get full boots. You're going to skip over Devourer's Gauntlets for right now and get Ninja Tabi. It gives 20 physical power, 100 mana, 25% attack speed, and 18% movement speed. Now, these all benefit Apollo. 20 physical power for damage, 100 mana for his ult, and 25% attack speed because, again, we're centering around attack speed and pen for this build. Next up, you're going to finish off Devourer's Gauntlets as quickly as you can and get to stacking. When it is evolved, it gives 65 physical power and 29% lifesteal. Those are great stats, especially in the duo lane where you're boxing a lot. The lifesteal really comes in handy. Now this is an early game power spike, so you're going to want to stack as fast as possible, so farming is important. If you can outstack the enemy god, you're going to win every boxing match and he's never going to be able to take that fight, and you can apply pressure in the duo lane, which is the most important thing in Smite, pressure. Now the next item you want to get is Concise. Concise gives 40 physical power and 20% attack speed, but the passive is really why you want it. Basic attacks deal damage equal to 3% of the target's max health. If the target has over 2000 health, the bonus damage scales up. This effect reaches a maximum of 5% of the target's max health at 2750 health. Now this item's great and gets a lot of benefit because a lot of tanky gods are building health items such as Sledge and Stone of Gaia, especially in the solo lane, and then on the duo lane your Guardian is typically building a couple health items too, Sovereignty and Gauntlet of Thieves, so it benefits on both sides of the spectrum. Now even for the gods that aren't very tanky like the ADC, the mid lane, and the jungler, they're still taking that damage equal to 3% of their max health, so the passive isn't lost on them either. Now the next item you're going to build is Atalanta's Bow. Atalanta's Bow gives 25 physical power, 30% attack speed, and 20% physical penetration. The passive on it is also great. Upon getting a kill or assist on an enemy god, you gain Atalanta's agility for 10 seconds. This effect increases your attack speed by 20% and decreases the movement speed penalty for attacking, backpedaling, and strafing by 40%. Now they recently released in the Trickster God update show that Atalanta's Bow is going to be getting a nerf in that Trickster God update. It's going to decrease attack speed from 30% to 25% and decrease the movement speed while attacking and strafing from 40% to 30%. Now before that came out, it was always kind of a preference whether to go Atalanta's first or Concise first, and some hunters switched it out and some people played it differently, but I think after this nerf, it's going to be definitely after Concise. The 25% attack speed and the reduction on the passive is just going to make it a lower power spike than Concise would be. Now it's not a bad item. The 25 physical power is kind of low, but 25% attack speed, also with the passive that'll grant another 20% attack speed, is really good for the rest of the build, and the 20 physical penetration is excellent to have. Now the next item you're going to get is Silverbranch Bow. Now I think Apollo benefits from this bow more than any other hunter in the game. It gives 30 physical power, 35% attack speed, 10% physical penetration, and the passive gives a bunch of power. The passive is for each 0.02 attack speed you go over cap, you gain 2 physical power. Now it doesn't seem like a lot, but between his passive and all the other attack speed you've got throughout the build, you're going to get a huge power spike when you get this item. Now remember, his passive gives 100% attack speed increase. So when you get this bow, you're already pretty close to being capped on attack speed, and his passive shoots you way over the cap, getting a huge buff from the passive on this Silverbranch Bow. Now, his passive doesn't run out like a steroid. It's not on a 7-second timer. It lasts until you fire those 5 shots off. So take advantage of that. For that duration of time, you are going to have a huge power spike. So this is where I like to cast my abilities or build my passive up, stack it up, and then use my ult. You're going to get a bunch more damage out of your ultimate because that passive isn't going to go away. You're going to have a power spike for the entire duration you're flying around looking for an enemy god, and then when you drop on them, you're going to do a bunch more damage than you would if you didn't have that stacked up and you didn't have that bonus power spike from the Silverbranch passive. Next up, you're going to sell Hunter's Blessing and start buying Odie Bow, or Odysseus's Bow. It gives 40% attack speed, and the passive on it is every 4th basic attack triggers a chain lightning, damaging the target and up to 4 nearby enemies for 15 damage plus 60% of your total basic attack power. Now this is a great item because the chain lightning is going to bounce around in team fights and hit everybody, but the 40% attack speed is again adding to that Silverbranch Bow passive, giving you more power for the attack speed you're getting. Now, not a lot of games go to the 6th item. You either win or F6 before that happens, but if it does, sell your boots and get Ichabod. Ichabod gives 30% attack speed and 30 physical power, and the passive is for every successful basic attack, it increases your physical power by 15 and reduces the attack speed of the opponents by 10% for 5 seconds. Now this stacks 3 times, so you can get an additional 45 power from this item, so total it would give 75 power, and it would also reduce the enemy's attack speed by 30%. This is a really good item for when you 1v1 an enemy god, because as the fight goes on, you gain attack power and they lose attack speed. So the advantage kind of slants in your direction as the fight progresses, almost like Ring of Hecate, just not quite as powerful. Now, I personally love this item. I think it has potential to be picked up earlier. I think the reason it isn't is because the Atalanta's Bow passive still gives you that 20% additional attack speed. So that thing is giving you 45% attack speed and 20 physical penetration. It's really hard to trade that out for Ichaival, but I think it has potential. We'll see. Next up, we have combos, which Apollo doesn't really have aside from his ultimate combo. You really just auto attack cancel between his abilities to try to get him off as fast as possible. So the first one would be basic, so beautiful, basic. You auto attack cancel with so beautiful, try to fire him off as quick as possible. Next up, basic attack, serenade, so beautiful, basic. Now, you can swap those two around because when you serenade them and they get mesmerized, they're just a sitting duck. Sometimes so beautiful is just easier to shoot off when they're standing right there, you know you're going to hit it, and then you follow that up with a basic attack. Either or is good. I personally like to do the auto attack and then so beautiful because I don't really have a problem landing so beautiful. It's a straight line attack. Usually they're pretty close to you if you can land the mesmerize on them, so it should be pretty easy. So what I like to do is basic, serenade, basic, so beautiful, basic. Lastly, the only real combo, it's chain of abilities, you gotta land certain things, it's a little tougher, is with his ultimate, across the skies. So you fly in the air, find an enemy god, and land on him. Hopefully you land every one of those ticks, but the most important one is the last tick because it knocks them up. When you land, they get knocked up, you shoot them with an auto attack. This is where it can be kind of difficult because if the god's moving around when you land, kind of hard to gauge where they're gonna get knocked up, but you need to land that auto. Then you pop serenade. Now going back again, I talked about having your passive fully stacked, all 5 shots, before you ult, and this is why. If you have all 5 shots, you can get through this whole combo chain with your passive still up, doing max damage with all your abilities. If you only have 2 shots left in it, you're going to lose it halfway through, and you might not be able to finish off as strong as you would like. Okay, quick recap. You ult, you land on the enemy god, hopefully you hit him with all the ticks, but if you hit him with the last one, you knock him up. You auto attack them while they're in the air and pop serenade. They land stunned. Now, I pop basic attack, so beautiful, and then basic attack them to death. Usually, if you land all those, you're going to delete people off the map. It's going to happen so quickly, especially with that crazy power spike from your passive in Silverbranch Bow. You just do so much damage on a landing. You hit for 200 or 300 every tick. So just from the ultimate alone, you're going to do anywhere between 800 and 900 damage if you hit every tick. The next section we're going to go into is tips and tricks. Now, Apollo is a fairly straightforward god, but there are some things that I've learned along the ways that you can use to benefit your Apollo game. 1. Ult back to the lane while scoping the jungle on the way. Now, some people think it's a wasted ult, but early in the game you're going to be focusing on farming. You're not going to be diving into the solo lane from across the map. There's not going to be a lot of team fights going down. Nobody's going to be fighting fire giants, so use the ult to get back to your lane and don't miss out on the farm. Also, flying over the jungle helps because it gives you a view of what's coming your way. If the enemy jungler or the mid lane is rotating over and your mid lane doesn't call it out, you can see them while you're flying over it and give the heads up to your guardian, hey, get out, they're on their way. Next up is using his movement speed buff from his dash effectively for your team, not just for you. If you're chasing an enemy god and you dash in front of everybody, you're going to get the buff, you might chase him down, that's great. If you're coming around the corner and your team is ahead of you a little bit, land that dash in the biggest group of people you can. Give as much people the speed boost as you can and push as a whole group rather than just yourself. It also works on the reverse. If your team's losing the team fight and they start running away and you have the opportunity to slide in and give them the speed boost without putting yourself in imminent danger, do it. It'll help the whole team get out and you can restart the fight. Also remember that the mesmerize from Serenade and the knockup from the move both shuts down any channeling ability. So if you're going against a Bacchus who's gonna burp, if he's burping you can Serenade him and it'll stop that burp. Anubis, the Plague of Locusts, that little spray he puts out in front of him, it'll stop that. It'll stop Bellona's Bludgeon, the move where she 360s and then slams overhead with the hammer, it'll stop that as well. It'll also stop Cthulhu's Mire. The Mire only continues to do damage and stun if he's channeling it. If he pops it and you can stop it right away, it won't do any damage to you, it won't slow you or stun you, and you can even use it to help get a teammate out of it. Even if they get hit by the first drip, stop them from doing the second one, that way they don't get rooted in the middle of the circle, because being there you're just a sitting duck for the enemy team to jump on. A couple other quick examples is Kumba's Groggy Strike, that overhead shot that stuns you or roots you, the Rod Divine Light that blinds you, Dodgies, Thousand Cuts, etc, etc, etc. Anyone who has a channeling ability, you can stop with the Serenade or the dash from the moves. So I think that's it, guys. That is the Apollo guide. Like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, that's okay too. Everyone's entitled. Until then, guys, C93 out.